Hello and welcome back to JBCTR and to what is quite possibly the worst kept secret ever. This is my new Yaris GR. And here it is, at last, my Yaris GR, and it's been one hell of a wait, I'm not gonna lie. The wait times on these are obscene at the moment, but I finally got one, and I'm pleased to report it's epic. Now, the reason for choosing this car is really because I just couldn't find anything to follow on from the Fiesta ST. So really, kind of what I needed was a Fiesta RS. And that's what this is. So if you compare it to my old Fiesta, the one I sold in its modified form, it had around 250, 260 horsepower. This, in its standard form, has about the same amount of power, plus the additional driver wheels at the rear. So it kind of feels like natural progression and a bit more of a firm base to build upon and change and modify and all that good stuff. But if you don't actually know what this car is, and I don't know how you wouldn't if you're watching this, I feel I should tick off all the boxes just for completion really. So in double quick time, this is what the Yaris GR is. So let's start under the bonnet. Here you've got a 1.6 three-cylinder turbocharged engine producing 257 horsepower and 266 foot-pound of torque. At least that's what they say officially. A lot of these have been on the dyno producing well in excess of that, which is very impressive considering that this is already the most powerful production three-cylinder engine ever. So the Fancy Pants engine is then mated to a 6-speed gearbox, which then drives the wheels through all 4 wheels through Toyota's Fancy Pants new all-wheel drive system. So in the middle, you've got a Toyota clutch system type thing, which was developed by a Toyota-owned brand, so kind of in-house. And they claim that it's smaller and lighter than a Haldex. Ooh, shots fired. And then on the circuit pack model, which this is, it's then mated to a Torsen differential at the front and a Torsen differential at the back. So 2 limited slip differentials, and you also get these lightweight forged BBS alloys as well. And since owning this, I've realized that these need to stay away from potholes and curbs because they are a lot of money to replace. £1,600 to be exact, for each wheel. That's mad. Anyway, the moan about the wheels over. Onto the drive system, it's fully configurable by the driver on the fly. So when you start the car, it defaults to normal mode. That has a 60-40 front wheel drive bias. Then you can flick it to sports mode. That gives it a 70-30 rear wheel drive bias. And if you want to be in track, you've got 50-50 for the most optimum grip. And to support this pretty epic drive chain, the entire car has been redesigned. So they've called it Yaris, but it's not really a Yaris at all. And talking of body changes, let's start with the roof. As you can see, we have a fake carbon fiber roof. It's real carbon, actually. I don't know why they've covered it in a fake carbon wrap. Never mind. And the roofline itself is actually 91mm lower than a standard Yaris. Sticking at the rear of the car, you can also see these massively flared rear arches, and that is to cover the wider track. So this car is 55mm wider than a standard Yaris, and that's because they've used the underpinnings from their larger cars like the CHR and the Prius, but only at the rear. At the front, the chassis is still a Yaris chassis, so the rear is actually wider than the front, which is pretty cool. Now, if we move around to the side, kind of hard to miss, you've got these massive GR branded brakes, and around the front, these brakes are fed with these huge cooling ducts. So this is the interior. It's very clear this is not where they spent their money. This interior really could have been just lifted straight out of a 90s Toyota and just plonked in here. There's a few modern touches, like the screen is quite an obvious one, but visually it's not very inspiring, I must admit. But I actually I quite like it. For me, it's quite familiar. I've never had a car with a fancy pants interior, so yeah, I like it. Now, the one thing they have got right is everything that you need to drive this thing. The steering wheel is nice and thin. It's not a car that you want to wrestle around, so you don't need a big girthy steering wheel. You need a nice, delicate steering wheel, which is exactly what they fitted here. The gear stick is not that far away, and actually the gearbox, I think, feels really nice. Handbrake is, again, not far. Like, everything you need is in the right place. But the only slight gripe I've got about the driving of this car is the pedal spacing. Now, this has been covered quite widely on YouTube, with loads of people going, "Oh, it's really hard to heel and toe." The reality is, yes, the accelerator is a bit further away from the brake, and therefore it's a little bit more difficult. But given that this is going to be my daily car, I've almost got used to heel and toeing in it already, and I've only done 150 miles. So it's just one of those gripes you've got to get used to when you buy a new car. And lastly, these seats. Clearly they have put a bit of time and effort into these seats because they are wonderful. They're not too tight and huggy, so I'm obviously not the largest of guys, but I feel secure. I imagine you could get a slightly portlier chap in here and be nice and comfortable. The biggest thing that I like about these chairs is the faux Alcantara, because the material itself grips you, so you don't feel like you need a massive to hold you in. You just sit on it and the material itself does the job. And they're just really comfy seats. I actually really like them, despite being a bit high. Now, I'll be honest, today I can't give you a full review of the car because it's got 140 miles on it at the moment and therefore it's still being run in. But I can share with you my initial impressions, and that's kind of what I'm aiming to do. And hopefully this little bit of onboard footage gives you an idea of what it's like in here. So let me get out of this village and we can have a little bit more of a play whilst still in the break-in period. Okay, so now we're on some open road. Obviously with the run-in period, the running in is mainly around the engine, but it's also the suspension and brakes and that kind of stuff. So I haven't been able to play too much, but what I have been able to do is just sort of throw it into corners a little bit faster than I perhaps think I should and see what happens. And amazingly, this thing just seems to stick, even though I'm not really pushing it yet. It's kind of, I don't know how they've made it stick quite so well. Right then, so I'm just looking to leave this village, and I believe this takes me out onto a traditional British B road, so we can see what this thing is like. Now, as I said, it's in the warming up period, so I can't go too mental on the engine, but I can use reasonably high revs, just not on full throttle. But it should give us an indication of what this thing's like, a little bit of an indication of what this engine sounds like, because I think it sounds great. Fake or not, I think it sounds brilliant. So throw it into here. It's just the way it sticks. It's mad. It's like it should not stick through those bumps on that corner. It's a little bit insane. And now I have a slightly daredevil cyclist who just didn't look at all. Now, the reason this thing sticks like it does is all about weight. It's got a four-wheel drive system in it, which is not light. They've had to sort of just suck that up, and they've managed to sap weight from everywhere else in the car. And actually, it's a whole lot more noticeable as an owner where they've tried to save weight than I thought it would be. So let me pull over and show you, because I think it's quite interesting. It's quite yeah, it's quite cool. It really adds to the character of the car. So let me find somewhere to stop and I'll show you. Right, we'll start with the doors. So actually, the doors feel incredibly light, and that's because they've been made out of aluminium. Same story with the bonnet, which is incredibly light, and the most obvious is actually in the boot. And in here you have a parcel shelf that is so thin that you can prod it and actually see straight through it as well. So that's not going to be adding much weight. You've also got the boot floor, which is again quite thin and not too flimsy, but certainly very light. And weirdly, the mechanism for holding this up is simply just to sort of flop it into place, and that's about as much. But it works and it's light, so I can see why they did that. The boot floor is supported by just some polystyrene, and other than that, you've got nothing in the boot apart from the battery, which is located over the centre of the rear axle for weight distribution purposes. And yeah, basically everything on this car appears to be designed to make it go fast. I quite like that. So there we have it. There's a few of my initial impressions of the Yaris GR, but of course a JBCTR review would not be complete without the negatives. And unfortunately this car has just one really. Unfortunately, I feel the whole car has this air of running out of money about it. So for example, the carbon fibre roof, it's a lovely carbon fibre roof, but instead of finishing it, they just put a vinyl wrap on it. And I don't really like carbon effect wrap at the best of times, but it's even more annoying when it's OEM because it's just not going to last the lifetime of the car. I mean, I'm constantly going to have to be cleaning this so it doesn't get damaged. So that's a bit of an issue. And obviously the interior kind of speaks for itself. Very much fit for purpose, but for a car that's a performance brand, should we say, it is a little subpar. But as we said, it has been built for a purpose, and that purpose was to make it as light as possible so it went as fast as possible. And I think that kind of sums up the whole car really. It's been built for a purpose. It's so perfectly imperfect, which is why I like it and why so many other people have taken so fondly to this thing. And there we have it, the perfectly imperfect Yaris GR, and I absolutely love it. I've no doubt there will be many more videos on this with a bit of customization, a little bit of just general driving and that kind of stuff. So if you want to see more of that, feel free to hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one. Aside from my soul.